So I had a group of girlfriends over for afternoon tea last weekend to celebrate someone's birthday. And we all have children of different ages. Some have kids that are grown up, but a couple of people didn't have kids. But we were talking about, one woman was talking about whether or not to send her child to school next year or the year after. It's one of those kind of March birthdays or April birthdays, and she just wasn't sure. So we were talking about the pros and cons of when you send your child. And, of course, the pros are no more paying for childcare because it is a fortune. Mm-hmm. But when they go to school, presuming they go to the public school, suddenly you're not paying. However, the problem with that is that you've got to deal with school holidays. And the other thing that had just occurred to this mother is, what on earth do I do at 3 o'clock? How does anybody work when they have to pick up their child at 3 o'clock, drop them before 9 and pick them up at 3, and I don't know what to do? And she was looking around in that same way that I've seen so many women do. When it occurs to you, oh my God, how are people walking around with jobs when there's this 3 p.m. pickup? What do you do?
Oh, the 3 p.m. shock. You named it.
The 3 p.m. shock.
Look, I think it's fascinating because you're No Filter this week with Christine Armstrong, who is a woman who has written a book all about being a working parent. It's called The Mother of All Jobs. And that is one of my favourite, no surprises. I don't think anyone will be surprised, but that is one of my favourite No Filters ever. One of those ones, and any working parent who hasn't listened to it, that you're driving along or walking along listening to it going, yes, yes. And you discuss this a little bit in that, and it's so true. The thing is it's tricky, just like everything in parenting is tricky, because it's also caught up in a lot of judgment. So if you decide, because this is what I personally did, is you go, well, obviously I'm going to put my kids in after school care, because daycare, as you rightly pointed out, I could drop them at 7:30 or 8 o'clock and pick them up at 5 or 6. And, you know, plenty of people will have their judgments about how long a day that is, but that's the reality for a lot of parents. And so you want to get them into after school care. But two things. One, for a lot of people, it is incredibly difficult to get them into after-school care. Certainly at the school that my kids go to, it's very oversubscribed because there's the vast majority of working parents. So you want to get on this list, and parents will have all these secret tips about if you get up really early on the day that you register for it, and you call and you stay on the phone or you turn up at the door, you might get on the list. So there's that whole stress. And then also there is a certain amount of judgment where people go, well, so-and-so's in aftercare every day. You know, it's kind of like, oh, isn't that sad?
It really underlines the fact, and it's a big shock if you don't have children yet, that the whole system, the whole education system, is based around the idea of having one full-time parent at home. Mm. And if you don't, you are pretty screwed, because getting a place is hard enough, as you say, Holly. And Jessie, it's probably a shock to you that, hang on, if there's 500 kids in a school, why can't they all stay for aftercare? But there's only 2 or 3 aftercare teachers, and also it costs money. So if you have to put your kids in after school care, I think the minimum it would cost would be $20 a day. Mm-hmm. That's an extra $100 per kid for after school care. And so you are paying for the privilege of having a job.
What do you think the solution is?
I think the solution is that not longer school days, because I actually think aftercare is fantastic. And what I say to everyone is that when we were growing up in the 80s and the 90s, certainly in the 70s, after school care would be roaming around your neighbourhood. Now, for a whole bunch of reasons, people don't do that anymore. Kids don't do that anymore. Certainly my kids don't, and I don't know any kids who do. But what replaces that, what can replace that, is aftercare. What aftercare can be at its best is that the kids have a snack, they do their homework, and then they go and play. And they mix with all different ages, and it's just they play for 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever until they're picked up at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whenever it suits their parents.
Is aftercare at school or is it someone's?
In most cases, it is at school. But again, as Holly said, there's a very limited number of people. So my solution is that part of the education system should include supervised care, good supervised care from 9 till 6, or 8:30 till 6 actually, so that parents can actually work.
I agree. And Christine Armstrong said that she sends her kid to a school in England, which is where she's from, who have adjusted their school hours. And there are some countries in the world that have adjusted their school hours too. And I can't remember what country it is.
Probably Denmark.
There is one of those marvellous Scandinavian countries who always seem to be doing everything right, who have actually gone the other way and adjusted the working day. So the working day now fits in with the school day. They both do something like 8 till 3. And then there's a certain expectation for a lot of jobs, of course, that you might log on again later, but that everything is more aligned. The other thing is that I'd like to put into this, though, is that there is also an expectation, especially on middle-class parents, that your kids will do 25 different after-school activities if you are doing your job as a parent correctly. And it's actually impossible to also do that unless you have a stay-at-home parent or have a job that allows you to leave at 3, because you have to drive Johnny to wherever he's going, and then the violin lessons, and then the cricket, and the da-da-da-da. So if we could combine the after-school care
and have
with
it
some
happening
improving
at
activities, wouldn't that be good?
But this is why so many women leave the paid workforce and start their own businesses. You know, this is part of the reason I started Lady Startup, part of the reason we've seen such an absolutely exponential increase in the number of women starting their own businesses, because they say they need flexibility over their hours, because especially when you've got little kids like in kindy and grade 1 and infants, it can feel like a long day, and you do feel incredibly guilty. As they get older, of course, they might even be able to catch the bus and just let themselves into their house like I did and so many latchkey kids did. But even that's pretty unheard of these days.
I think culturally as well, there's got to be a shift in how we look at and respect work, like after school care. Both of my brothers who work in childcare work casually at after school care things. The pay is abysmal. What you have to do is really bloody hard because it's an enormous responsibility, and they've got kids that they're looking at and they want to play and they want to educate and all of those sorts of things. So I think that's hard too, because parents don't have an enormous amount of money to throw at this. There are parents that are really struggling, but then at the same time, those sorts of workers are extremely underpaid.